Hello, beautiful humans. My name is Rachel Coletta, and welcome to episode 2 of The Light and the Dark. This episode is going to be all about the cycles of light and darkness. So this episode is building off of the information that I shared in episode 1, which is all about the energies of the light and dark, what they are and how they relate to one another, how they contrast each other, and the interplay between the two. So if you have not already watched that episode, I definitely recommend checking it out first before you dive in to this episode. I will be sure to link that below so you can easily access that. So let's jump in here to talking about the cycles of the light and the dark. This is a really, really important concept, I feel, for us to understand. It's something that so many of the ancient cultures, the Mayans, the Egyptians, understood this concept of the great cosmic year, or these larger cycles of light and dark, and it's something that has really slipped from our collective consciousness over the last maybe 1,000 or so, 2,000 years. And the reason why it's so important to be able to understand these larger cycles of light and dark is that it gives us perspective. It allows us to give proper context to the shifts and to the changes that we notice happening in our external reality, and to the shifts and changes that we notice ourselves going through individually. So that is why I feel like this is such an important concept to really be able to grasp. So we're going to go into detail about talking about these cycles of light and dark, and also I'm going to share with you where we're at now through these cycles of light and dark, and why this is such an exciting time to be here on this planet right now. To begin, I want to start by talking about the Yugas. So the Yuga are a name for an epoch or an era that are within the larger processional cycles of about 24,000 to 26,000 years, depending on what resource that you refer to or that you look at. So it's really important here to let go of that conscious brain's need to know this exact numbers and time periods, and to just create some relaxed space to understand these larger concepts. So I'm going to use the time of about 24,000 years as I'm talking and sharing in more detail in this video. If you feel like a different term or time is more appropriate, that's okay. Again, it's just important to understand this general concept here. So if you're not familiar, what is the processional cycle? Processional cycle refers to the journey of the sun through the zodiac that gives us the ages that correspond with the various energies of the 12 different signs of the zodiac. So we have the age of Pisces, just moving into the age of Aquarius. So over this period of the entire processional cycle, you're going to get an age that corresponds to the archetype or the energies of each of these signs. So there are 4 ages within these Yuga cycles. We have the Iron Age, the Bronze Age, the Silver Age, and the Golden Age. And I think it's really interesting to note here that the very practice of alchemy is of turning what is often referred to as lead or denser base metals into gold. So it's interesting that these Yuga cycles drive our collective consciousness through this alchemy process of alchemizing these darker base, these denser base energies into these golden ages of awareness and enlightenment. And that on a microcosm, that each of us individually in each incarnation, this is our individual task to alchemize the denser, more base energies into these enlightened, lighter frequencies. So the journey of the processional cycle and the Yugas is the journey of our collective evolution here on Earth, and it marks the shifts in our consciousness as we grow and as we evolve spiritually. So these cycles of light and dark, we can refer to them as cycles of ascension and descension. We could refer to them as cycles of density and cycles of lightness, as cycles of slumber and cycles of awakening, or the way that I really like to refer to them, the terms that make the most sense to me, is cycles of forgetting and then cycles of remembering. And by forgetting and remembering, what I mean is, what I'm referring to are these driving forces of these energetic cycles of evolution, of consciousness, where we forget more of our spiritual nature. We forget our more multidimensionality, and then cycles where we remember who we really are on a soul and spiritual level. So what really drives these cycles? It's a focus on materialism that which is physically manifested, that eventually becomes an obsession, is what gives rise to the cycle of descension or forgetting. So we forget our multidimensionality, we forget our spirit, we forget the larger part of us. So our physical representation, our physical experience is just the very tippy tip of the iceberg of who we are on a soul level. Of course, it's a very, very important tip, and it's a very, very important and integral perspective for the soul's evolution to have, but it's only a very, very small portion of who we are, largely speaking. So what happens is through remembering who we are, we remember that we're creator beings. We remember how to create our physical reality. And what starts as an appreciation of what we're creating eventually becomes a focus and a perception where our perspective narrows and narrows and narrows and gives rise to these denser cycles, this denser aspect of the cycle of forgetting, right? As the focus becomes more narrow and narrow, we lose sight, we forget these other aspects of ourself, of our soul, of our spirit. So aspects of self and of consciousness as a whole become relegated to the shadow. And obviously this is something that on a soul level, from a larger perspective, that we agree upon. We agree to surrender to this cycle of forgetting or relegating these aspects of self to the shadow, these aspects of consciousness to the shadow, because of the unique perspective that it offers us. So the energy that then drives the cycle back towards this ascension aspect, or this remembering, is the revealing or the unveiling of shadow, or what we've forgotten. The knowing, or what you might call the inner standing of our multidimensionality and our awareness beyond the material. And I actually have a video that talks about this in more detail. It's called, I believe, the number one thing that you need to know about ascension, and I'll link to that video below as well. But the really important thing to understand here, to be aware of, is that this ascension, it's not a leaving of our physical self. It's not a leaving of the third dimension, or a leaving of these awarenesses behind and transcending them. It's actually an expansion of awareness. It's being able to hold all of these perspectives. That's really what ascension is. It's expansion. It's not the movement away from something, it's the inclusion of multiple things or multiple perspectives. So you can imagine, and it's easy to see, that as we start to traverse, as we start to transcend and move out of the period of density into a period of remembering, that there is a period where a big unveiling, a big revealing of shadow, of that which has been relegated to the shadow, occurs. And during this period, it can feel very, very chaotic. It can feel like there's a lot of shakeups, a lot of chaos, a lot of things that feel dense or heavy that are coming to the surface and asking for our conscious awareness and witnessing. And it's really, really easy, if we don't understand these larger cycles, to catastrophize and to feel like this might be evidence that everything is getting worse, when in fact it's actually evidence of exactly the opposite. So if on an individual level you'd like to understand more about shadow work and about how the shadow is revealed and how to transmute it, I do also have a really in-depth masterclass all about shadow work, so I'll link to that video below as well. Next, I'd like to address a really, really important question that I received, which is, can we alter, influence, or prevent these cycles of light and dark? Can we enact our will to alter these cycles of light and dark, or maybe alter or prevent the dark or the forgetting aspect of these cycles? So this is really, really important to understand here, is that the cycles of light and dark, they're like a beating heart. It's like the rhythm of inhales and exhales. drives movement. It drives expansion. We need this sort of contraction and expansion and contraction and expansion to actually further consciousness. So each time one of these cycles occurs, it's not as though we're stuck in a karmic loop where we're just continuing to repeat the energetics of the same cycle over and over and over again. Each expansion pushes consciousness out further. Each contraction pulls it in more tightly. And you need that momentum, that more tight contraction to push out that more expansive awareness. So these rhythms, this beating heart, this inhale and exhale is necessary for continued expansion of awareness. And it's just really the way that energy works, right? For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So every exponentially intensified contraction creates an exponentially intensified expansion. But of course, this isn't to say that you're powerless or that there's some fated aspect or some destiny for you to just get swept up in these cycles without any control or without any free choice. That's not the case at all. In fact, where we have control, where our power really comes into play, is our exercising of our free choice and how we work with these cycles. In fact, it is our free choice of how we're working with these energies. It's our free will to dive deeper into shadow and then open even more broadly to light that is actually the driving force of these cycles. It's driven by literally the desire of the universe itself, and by the desire of us as expressions of the universe itself to expand and expand consciousness. So both the light and the dark mirror to us aspects of all that is, of Source itself, and of who we are as expressions of all that is, or of Source itself. Each aspect of the cycle is equally as valuable and reveals more and more of the breadth of truth, and reveals actually the more of the breadth of truth that is revealed, the more truth kind of collapses in on itself and actually becomes one universal truth, which is that we are everything and everything is us. The law of one, right? The more we explore and dive deep into the shadow, and then the more we explore and expand broadly into light, the more breadth of self that we see, and the more we realize that the universal truth is oneness. The cycles of light and dark is really the cycle of regeneration, the cycle of the phoenix, right? Just like a flower blooms and then dies and is reborn. And we can see this cycle reflected in the story of many of the ancient mystery schools. For example, Osiris, who is the Lord of regeneration in ancient Egypt, the Lord of light, of Jesus or Yeshua in Christian mysticism, and of the green man or the green woman, who is again this cycle of regeneration, of rebirth. So where are we now? This is such a crucial awareness. So we're in the age of Aquarius, and I want to bring up this indicator, this marker of the dwarf planet of Sedna. So Sedna was, discovered, or we could say rediscovered, in 2003. She has this very long elliptical orbit where approximately every 12,000 years she comes in close proximity to Earth. And the length of this long elliptical orbit is, so long, it takes 12,000 years for her to make this journey, that we forget, modern astrology forgets that this planet actually exists. And then we discover or rediscover it and say, hey, oh my gosh, there's this dwarf planet, Sedna, that's coming close to Earth. And Sedna is the creation goddess of the Inuit people. She's also the goddess of the sea, which I find is very interesting, because for the Inuit people, this goddess of the sea, the creation goddess, really that driving force of creation, had both the capacity to be a bringer of abundance, of nourishment, of safety, right? The Inuit people obtained a lot of their sustenance through fishing, through the bounty of the sea. And she also had the power for great destruction, these big storms in the sea that had the power to move inland, move on land, and destroy villages. So this is the energy of Sedna. And again, she comes into that close proximity to Earth about every 12,000 years, so approximately half of the processional cycle. And she shows us, she alerts us when she comes into close proximity to Earth that we are at either the midpoint or the end point of this processional cycle, which are always going to be times of dramatic change. So right now, during this time, as we speak, Sedna is in her closest proximity to Earth. So she's alerting us that right now is a time of great change, of big shakeups, a time for us to wake up, to open to shifting our consciousness, to open to being willing to see and witness our shadow and to alchemize it. So this is a very, very exciting time to be alive. And when we can understand where we're at now within the context of these larger cycles, it gives us some solidness. It gives us the perspective to understand where we are and where we're heading and how we can work with the energies that are coming up collectively and individually. It's an opportunity for us to surrender to the knowing that challenges present to help us know, help us reveal, help us ground and integrate our power. So this is really the calling, the expansion that we're being invited to see, to witness, and to open to, that we're really being supported through the momentum of these larger cycles into doing. We really do have this astrological, this cosmic, and this energetic support here. And speaking of support, now is a time where it is more important than ever for us to really get comfortable with learning about, with opening, with unlocking and exploring our intuition. This is a time where the very concepts and foundation of truth itself are shifting. And looking to others for understandings, for reference points, for truth is going to become less and less valid and helpful. So in this quest, in this journey that we're embarking on to open our intuition and to be able to discern and decipher our own heart-centered truth through the portal of the heart, I feel that it's so important to really open to and develop a relationship with your guides. Your guides are an aspect of your own multidimensionality, and they have a perspective beyond the 3D, beyond the third dimension, that they can really assist you in finding and discerning your own truth, your own path, your own purpose through this time of large change. So to support you in doing that, I actually have a free workshop that's all about spirit guides, and it also includes a guided meditation to help you practice connecting to your own guides and receiving and interpreting messages from your own guides. So I would love to offer that to you. I'll put the link below so that you can get access to that workshop. Thank you so much for being here with me today. Thank you so much for being here on this planet at this time. I'm so grateful to have you here. If you found this video helpful, please do not forget to hit the thumbs up and give it a like. And if you're not already subscribed, be sure to hit the subscribe button below and the bell button next to it so that you can get alerted when I create and put out new videos. All my love and many, many blessings to you. I'll see you on the next video. Bye.